The slap echoed through the living room like a gunshot. My cheek burned, the pain blooming sharp and fast. I stood frozen, stunned, my hand pressed against the side of my face. The silence that followed was thick and cruel, broken only by Margaret's satisfied scoff from her armchair. "About time someone put her in her place," she muttered, swirling her wine as if nothing unusual had happened. Jake stood over me, still breathing hard. His face was cold. Not sorry, not shocked, just satisfied. "Maybe now you'll think twice before embarrassing me in front of important people," he said, adjusting his cufflinks like he had just finished a routine task. "Your little performance tonight was completely unacceptable, Caroline." My performance. What I had done was answer a question. Lydia Braxton, the wife of Jake's senior partner, had asked me about pediatric nursing during dinner, and I'd shared a story about a child who reminded me why I love what I do. That was it. And for that, my husband slapped me in front of his mother and sister. Aubrey snorted behind me from the couch, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "You kind of hijacked the whole evening, Caroline." It was awkward. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut into the inside of my cheek. But the pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that none of them, my husband, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, thought anything about this was wrong. That for them, it was just another moment where I had been too much, too opinionated, too present. No one heard the front door open, but I did. I heard the unmistakable sound of heavy boots crossing the marble entryway. I turned toward the sound just as my father stepped into the living room. Colonel Richard Sawyer, retired, decorated, still commanding every room he walked into. He wasn't alone. Two uniformed men flanked him, standing tall and silent behind his shoulders like shadows. The entire room froze. Jake's expression faltered, the arrogance slipping. Margot lowered her glass. Aubrey stopped mid-sip. My father's eyes moved slowly from my tear-streaked face to my bruised cheek. Then to Jake's still raised hand. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He just spoke, his voice calm and low. "Gentlemen," he said to the men behind him, never taking his eyes off my husband. "I believe we've found our target." And that was the moment, after 3 years of silence, sacrifice, and survival, I knew I wasn't going back. Not ever again. 3 years. That's how long I'd spent trying to become the kind of wife Jake and his family would approve of. The kind who smiled at the right times, who stayed quiet when told, who made herself small enough to fit into their perfectly curated world. And every time I tried to breathe, they made the walls a little tighter. It started slowly. The subtle digs, the backhanded compliments, the moments Jake would say I wasn't presentable enough for certain firm events, or when Margot would comment on my clothes with a tilted head and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Is this from Target?" she once asked, her fingers grazing the fabric of a dress I'd bought with my first real paycheck. How practical. Jake had laughed. "Mom, not everyone shops at Nordstrom." I laughed too back then, because that's what you do when you're trying to be accepted. You laugh at the insults and pretend they don't sting, but they do. I still remember the day I came home from a 12-hour hospital shift and found my grandmother's quilt, my most treasured possession, stuffed in a black trash bag by the door. Margaret called from upstairs, her voice cheerful. "I had the bedroom redone while you were at work. That old thing didn't really go with the new decor." That old thing, that quilt had survived the Great Depression. It had wrapped 3 generations of women in comfort. It was the one thing I brought into that house that was mine. And she threw it away like it was nothing. Jake didn't defend me. He walked into the room, looked at the redecorated walls, and said, "We should be grateful, Caroline. It looks amazing." Grateful. That word haunted me. I was supposed to be grateful that I lived in a house where nothing reflected me. Grateful that I gave up weekends to host parties for people who didn't know my name. Grateful that my job, my calling, was reduced to basic bedside care in front of strangers. Whenever I brought up picking up an extra shift or taking a certification course, Jake shut it down. What would people think? That I can't provide for my wife? He didn't want a partner. He wanted a prop, a well-dressed, well-behaved wife who would smile and nod while he built his career on top of my silence. And for a long time, I played the role. I convinced myself that marriage meant compromise, that families always had friction, that if I worked hard enough, tried hard enough, they'd eventually see me. They never did. Not until the night everything broke. The night of the dinner party had started like every other time I was expected to perform. Jake had been pacing since noon, checking his watch, adjusting his tie, making sure I understood how important everything was. "Don't embarrass me tonight, Caroline. Mr. Braxton is considering me for senior partner." I had spent hours preparing his favorite appetizer from scratch, goat cheese and caramelized onion tartlets. I arranged the flowers, polished the silver, and even changed my dress twice after Margot told me the first one was too pedestrian. Aubrey, as always, perched on the kitchen counter, offered commentary with her usual smirk. "The flowers are too tall. They'll block conversation." She was always full of helpful suggestions. When the Braxtons finally arrived, I felt like I was on stage. Jake put on his best charm. Margaret floated around refilling wine glasses. And I tried to fade into the background until Lydia Braxton turned to me during dinner and asked with genuine warmth, "Caroline, pediatric nursing must be such meaningful work. What drew you to it?" The question stunned me. People didn't usually ask. And when they did, it was often laced with a hint of judgment like, "Why didn't you go to medical school?" But Lydia was different. Her tone was kind, her interest real. So I answered. I told her about a little boy named Marcus who came in for surgery, convinced he wouldn't wake up the same. We spent hours talking about superheroes, about how strength sometimes comes from what we survive. When he woke up, he whispered, "I think I got my superpowers now." Lydia's eyes misted. "That's beautiful. What a gift you gave him." I smiled, quietly proud. But Jake's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Caroline's being modest. She just does the basic bedside stuff. Nothing too technical." I blinked, unsure if I heard him right. Basic bedside stuff. As if the hours I'd spent managing IVs, comforting families, preventing infections, and advocating for terrified kids meant nothing. Lydia's smile faded. "Actually, pediatric nursing requires advanced training," she said. "My daughter looked into it before choosing family medicine." I tried to continue, but Jake interrupted again. "Caroline tends to oversell her role," he said with a forced laugh. "You know how it is. Everyone wants to sound important." The table felt awkwardly quiet. Even Margot looked uncomfortable for once, but Mr. Braxton leaned forward, his voice calm. "Actually, Jake, I think your wife was sharing something meaningful. Caroline, you were saying—" That moment, being seen, heard, validated, was so unfamiliar it almost hurt. But I found my voice again. "He was 7, I said, and scared. I told him that sometimes people who go through hard things come out stronger." When he woke up, he believed that Mr. Braxton nodded. "That, Caroline, is leadership." Jake's jaw clenched. And I knew then I would pay for this moment later. The Braxtons left with warm goodbyes, complimenting the food, the evening, and surprisingly me. The door had barely closed when Jake's smile dropped. "What was that?" he hissed, his voice low but dangerous. I stood in the foyer, still holding a serving tray. "What was what?" "Don't play dumb, Caroline. You completely hijacked the conversation. You made me look like I don't even support my own wife." I blinked. I was answering a question. "Lydia asked me about my job. She was being polite, and you turned it into a one-woman show." He stepped closer, his voice rising despite himself. "You embarrass me in front of my boss, in front of people who matter." Something inside me cracked. "I embarrassed you by telling a story about a scared child who found courage." Jake's eyes narrowed. "You forgot your place." Those 4 words hung in the air like poison. My place? Yes, your place is to support me, not make it about your little hospital stories. I laughed then, short, bitter, surprising even myself. "You want to talk about support, Jake? I rearranged my entire life around you. My work schedule, my weekends. I gave up promotions so I could host parties like this one. I've let your mother redecorate our house, throw away my things, humiliate me in front of guests. And tonight, I dared to speak for 60 seconds, and that was too much." From the living room, I heard Margot's voice. Told you she'd ruin it. She doesn't know how to behave in polite company. Jake didn't correct her. Of course, he didn't. No, let her speak, I said, stepping into the room. Let's make it a family affair. Clearly, everyone has thoughts about my role here. Margot sat like a queen holding court. Aubrey scrolled her phone with a smirk. Caroline, Margot said, you need to understand tonight wasn't about you. It was about Jake's career, about elevating his image, and you made it all about yourself. By answering a question, by stealing focus, a simple, it's rewarding, would have been enough. Because his accomplishments matter, and mine don't. For once in your life, couldn't you just be quiet and support me? Jake snapped. I stared at him, the man I once promised to love. Support you? I've supported you while shrinking myself to dust. And you think tonight was about me not supporting you? His face flushed. He raised his hand. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't flinch. Do it, I said softly. Show them who you really are. And he did. The slap echoed across the room. Margaret laughed. Aubrey gasped, and then the front door creaked open. Measured footsteps. A voice like steel. Gentlemen, my father said, stepping into view. I believe we found our target. Colonel Richard Sawyer didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The presence he carried, 30 years of military command, calm under fire, was more than enough to freeze the room in place. Jake slowly lowered his hand, his face draining of color. Sir, he stammered. I can explain. Can you? My father asked, his eyes never leaving Jake. Then please do. Tell me why you just struck my daughter in front of witnesses. It wasn't Epi. It was just an argument. Things got emotional. Sergeant Maddox, my father said without turning around. What did you observe? The younger soldier stepped forward with military precision. Sir, I observed the male subject with his hand raised in a threatening posture. The female appeared to have been struck, visible swelling noted on the left cheek. 2 additional females in the room witnessed the event and failed to intervene. And you, Corporal Rivera? Same observation, sir. Thank you, my father said quietly. That'll do for now. This is absurd, Margot burst out. You can't just storm into our home with armed men. This is a private matter. No, Mrs. Blake, he replied coldly. This is a documented incident of domestic violence, and I've been watching it build for months. Jake turned to me wide-eyed. You told him. I didn't have to, I said. He just knew. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. He placed it on the coffee table with deliberate care. 3 months ago, I hired a private investigator, he said. I started noticing things. The canceled visits, the bruises you explained away, the excuses. And I knew what I was looking at. Jake took a step back. You have no right. I have every right, Dad interrupted. You laid a hand on my daughter. You tried to isolate her. You chipped away at her sense of self, hoping no one would notice. But I did. He opened the folder and began laying out photographs, text messages, financial records, emails. Jake stared mute. These documents were sent to your law firm this morning, my father said, along with a detailed report outlining your behavior. The firm has a strict clause regarding moral conduct. I imagine by now you've already been suspended. You're trying to ruin me. No, I'm holding you accountable. He turned to Margot. Your country club also received a copy. They seemed disappointed. And Aubrey, congratulations on your engagement. I hope your fiancé's family isn't too alarmed by your silence and complicity. Screenshots travel fast online. Margaret's glass slipped from her hand, shattering. You're destroying our lives, she whispered. No, my father replied. You did that all on your own. I'm just making sure the consequences finally arrive. He looked at me then. His eyes softened. Caroline, it's time. Pack your bags. Take only what belongs to you. I've retrieved your grandmother's quilt. It's safe now. How did you? I've had this house under watch for weeks, sweetheart. I know every corner, every secret. He held out his hand. Let's go home. I looked around the room one last time at the man who hurt me, the mother who enabled him, the sister who watched it all, and laughed. Then I straightened my spine and walked toward my father. But I wasn't done just yet. 6 months passed. The pediatric wing of St. Augustine Memorial bustled softly in the early morning light. Monitors beeped in gentle rhythm. Nurses moved with quiet purpose, and the scent of antiseptic blended with the faint sweetness of flowers on the front desk. I had just finished my rounds checking vitals, adjusting medications, and comforting anxious parents when I heard the small voice call out, "Nurse Sawyer, room 312. Emma, 6 years old, post-kidney surgery, wide eyes, tangled hair, missing her dog more than anything." I stepped into the room with a smile. "What's up, sweetheart?" She clutched her stuffed bear tighter. "I can't sleep. My tummy feels weird. And what if Buster forgets me?" I sat down beside her bed, took her tiny hand in mine. "Oh, honey, dogs never forget the people they love. He's probably curled up by your bedroom door right now, dreaming about you." "Really? Really? And tomorrow when you go home, he'll be so excited to see you that you won't be able to stop him from jumping all over you." She giggled, the sound soft and light. "He always does that, even if I just go to school." "Then you're definitely his favorite person." She nodded, content, and I stayed with her until her breathing slowed and sleep pulled her under. When I stepped back into the hallway, I checked my phone. A message from my father. "Saw the news. Thought you should know." Attached was a link to a business journal. Headline: Blake Hastings law firm under investigation for misconduct. I scrolled through the article. Jake had been officially terminated, not just for the domestic abuse allegations my father had submitted, but for years of buried financial misconduct and mistreatment of clients. Former clients had begun organizing a class action lawsuit. The firm's name, once untouchable, was now mud. Another text came through, this time from my lawyer. "Margaret is offering full restitution plus damages if we settle out of court. Reputation damage. Social media exile. Turns out it's expensive." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I walked to my office, and sat down behind the desk with my nameplate, Carolyn Sawyer, RN, Pediatric Nursing Supervisor. My promotion had come 3 weeks ago, the position I'd quietly worked toward for years. It came with a better salary, greater responsibility, and most importantly, a platform. I'd already started designing support programs for staff members dealing with domestic abuse at home. The statistics were heartbreaking. So many caretakers suffering in silence. A knock on my door pulled me from my thoughts. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, stood there shifting from foot to foot.
Miss Seaver, I'm Lisa."
I'm new here, and I was wondering if maybe we could talk sometime privately. I saw the bruise on her wrist, half hidden by her sleeve. "Of course," I said gently. "My office is always open. Or we could grab coffee." She nodded, eyes glassy. "Coffee would be good." I smiled. "Then let's do that. You're not alone, Lisa. Not anymore." 1 year later, the hospital's memorial garden was filled with soft music, spring sunlight, and the quiet murmur of people who had shown up for something different. Not a traditional wedding, no groom, no white aisle, just me standing beneath an arch of wildflowers, wearing a simple dress I had chosen myself without needing anyone's approval. My father walked me down the stone path, his dress blues pressed, his medals gleaming, just like at my first wedding. But this time, everything felt different. This time, I wasn't a woman trying to fit into someone else's world. I was a woman who had reclaimed her own. Friends, colleagues, patients, families, and even a few nurses from other departments filled the folding chairs. People who had seen me fall, get back up, and rebuild. Dr. Monroe, our chief of surgery, officiated. She had gotten ordained online just for this occasion, saying, "Every woman should get to stand up and make vows to herself." And that's exactly what I did. I, Caroline Sawyer, promised to honor my voice, to trust my instincts, and to never again shrink myself to make others comfortable. I promised to keep growing, keep healing, and keep helping others find their strength. I promised to remember that I am enough exactly as I am. Applause filled the garden as I slipped a silver ring onto my own finger, a promise ring, a commitment to the most important relationship I'll ever have, the one with myself. At the reception held in the hospital cafeteria, which the team had transformed with fairy lights and donated flowers, I looked around and felt something powerful, love in its purest form. Colleagues who respected me, friends who valued me, people who had walked with me through the fire and out the other side. In the corner stood Lisa. No longer the nervous young nurse from a year ago, she was confident now, leading her own support group for healthcare workers facing abuse. Her smile said it all. Someone called out for a speech. I stood holding a glass of sparkling cider. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything. But I learned something important. You can't destroy a woman who refuses to stay broken. The woman who is slapped, belittled, erased, she's still part of me.
But she's not all of me.
She's the version that taught me empathy, taught me strength. So today, I'm not just celebrating freedom from a toxic marriage. I'm celebrating who I've become because of it. I raise my glass. Here's to second chances, to chosen families, to women who walk away from what doesn't love them back, to rewriting the story on our terms, and to anyone out there still finding the courage to take that first step. You are not alone. Your story isn't over. And you are worth every single chapter still to come.